She doesn't confess because you confront her. She confesses when you stop reacting. The truth doesn't leak under pressure, it leaks under calm. Every man who's ever begged for honesty made the same mistake. He thought intensity would bring clarity. It never does. The louder you ask, the quieter the truth becomes. But there's a method, a psychological rhythm, that makes a woman reveal more than she planned to. It's not about being harsh, it's about being unreadable. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how silence, awareness, and emotional control work together to expose what words can't hide. Because once she feels you've detached, her truth becomes her only way back in. Have you ever noticed how her version of events always sounds reasonable? Not exaggerated, not emotional, just reasonable enough to make you doubt your instincts. That's the art of perception control, the most subtle form of manipulation there is. See, women rarely lie to deceive. They lie to stabilize, to protect how you see them, to keep the emotional atmosphere safe, and to make sure they don't lose leverage. A woman's truth is always filtered through emotional safety. It's not about facts, it's about preservation. When she senses tension, when she feels your tone shift or your presence tighten, her brain doesn't say, "I'm about to lie." It says, "I need to protect the peace." That peace isn't about harmony, it's about control. She wants to manage your emotional reaction before you even realize you're reacting. Imagine this. You ask, "Where were you last night?" She looks you dead in the eye and says, "I was just with some friends." Nothing serious. Soft voice, calm tone, perfect pacing. Every piece of that answer was designed not to deceive, but to contain. Because the truth isn't about what happened. The truth is about what she wants you to feel. That's why her words sound so clean, so logical. They're built like armor. Every sentence, every gesture, every pause is calculated to keep you where she wants you, uncertain but not suspicious. You'll sense something is off, but you won't know why. You'll feel a dissonance between what she said and what your gut knows. And that's the exact space she needs to maintain her control. Here's the real psychology behind it. When a woman feels emotionally cornered, she doesn't fight. She redirects. She rewrites the moment to make you question your perception instead of her honesty. It's an instinctive form of narrative protection, the same mechanism that allows her to soothe, manipulate, and survive simultaneously. So when you hear her answer and it sounds perfectly balanced, perfectly convenient, don't just listen, observe. Notice how her tone is too calm for the context. Notice how she smiles when she shouldn't. Notice how her eyes shift, not with guilt, but with calculation. She's not lying to you. She's managing your perception. And as long as she believes you're still operating in the dark, still trying to understand her instead of reading her, she'll keep doing it because it works, because you make it easy, because she knows you're focused on what she says, not why she's saying it. The illusion of honesty isn't built on lies. It's built on your blindness to emotional strategy. If you want the truth, you have to first change what she perceives you already know, because the moment she thinks you're aware, the entire narrative starts to crack. Women don't tell the truth because you demand it. They tell it when they believe you already know. That's the quiet rule of feminine psychology. Honesty isn't a moral choice. It's a safety mechanism. When she senses you're naive, she edits reality. When she senses you're aware, she edits herself. You see, perception is leverage. The person who appears more conscious of the unspoken dynamic always holds control. Most men fail here. They show their confusion. They chase for clarification. They let their tone reveal uncertainty. Every question, every emotional reaction tells her exactly how much she can hide. But when your energy changes, when you stop chasing details and start observing patterns, the game shifts. She begins to feel it. Not because you said something clever, but because your silence, your posture, your focus all communicate one message. I see through this. Women are hypersensitive to perception. It's an evolutionary trait. Reading emotional cues was survival. So when you stop acting reactive, her brain can't predict your next move. That uncertainty unnerves her. She doesn't know what you've seen or what you've figured out, and that's when the walls start to crack. Try this once. When she gives an answer that doesn't sit right, don't confront it. Don't demand proof. Just pause. Let your eyes rest on her longer than she expects. Tilt your head slightly as, If you've connected something, then say calmly, "You don't need to explain. I already see what's going on." That sentence alone rewires the conversation. You've just flipped the power dynamic without raising your voice. You've made her subconscious panic, not out of guilt, but out of uncertainty. Because suddenly she realizes she's not leading the narrative anymore. You are. The psychological term is anticipatory compliance. When someone believes another person holds hidden information, they unconsciously reveal more than intended to protect themselves. She'll start softening her tone, filling the silence with details you didn't ask for, even correcting herself mid-sentence. She's trying to close the gap between what she said and what she thinks, you know. That's the invisible shift you need to master. You don't win the truth by confrontation. You win it by changing the environment in which deception feels unsafe. And here's the thing, most men never understand. When a woman feels you already see her, she loses the emotional incentive to hide because the lie no longer gives her power. It exposes her weakness. So the next time you sense dishonesty, don't react. Don't seek confirmation. Just act like the man who already knows. Watch how quickly her story rearranges itself in real time. The moment she senses you already know, her lies start to collapse on their own. That's the quiet dominance of awareness. No aggression, no threats, just presence. But awareness means nothing. If you don't know how to weaponize silence, men talk to find answers. Women talk to hide them. That's not cynicism. It's behavioral psychology. When emotions run high, men look for logic, women look for control, and words are their control mechanism. The more they speak, the more they can redirect attention, redefine tone, rebuild safety. That's why the man who learns to be silent becomes the most dangerous one in the room. Silence makes people confront their own truth. It's a mirror, and most can't handle their reflection. Here's what happens inside her mind when you stop talking. Cognitive dissonance. Her brain hates the emptiness. The stillness feels like exposure, as if your silence is stripping away her story. So she fills the gap with words, with nervous laughter, with unnecessary explanations. That's when the cracks start showing. Imagine this moment. You ask her something once, calm, steady, clear. Then you stop. No sighs, no frowns, no repeated questions, just presence. The pause stretches longer than she expects. Seconds feel like minutes. She starts to feel your silence pressing against her skin. And then she speaks again, softer, quicker, correcting herself. That's not conversation, that's confession. Most men ruin their leverage by breaking the silence first. They can't handle the discomfort. They think persistence equals strength. It doesn't. Persistence is loud insecurity. Power in its purest form is restraint. When you stay quiet, your silence becomes a pressure cooker. It amplifies everything she's trying to hide. The more she senses you're unbothered, the more she feels exposed because she can't read you. And that unknown is terrifying to someone who survives by reading emotion. Silence also signals something primal, emotional detachment. It tells her you're not desperate for reassurance. You're not waiting for her validation. You're simply watching, evaluating, choosing what to believe. That's when she starts revealing the truth. Not because you demanded it, but because your silence forced her to face it. And it's subtle. It's not about making her uncomfortable for sport. It's about letting her run out of scripts. Every manipulative narrative relies on dialogue, on your participation. Once you stop feeding it, it dies. Your silence breaks her performance. Your composure exposes her inconsistencies. Your calmness makes her panic. This is the paradox. You don't get honesty by chasing it. You get it by holding still long enough for it to surface. Because silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a man who already knows. And when she starts talking too much, that's where the next truth hides, buried inside the overflow of her own words. She suddenly gives you a full timeline, even when you didn't ask where she went, who was there, what time she left, what she wore, every small detail delivered with perfect precision. It sounds honest, it sounds open, but it's not clarity, it's camouflage. That's the paradox of deception. Guilty people over-communicate because when someone's telling the truth, they speak simply, they answer directly, they don't perform. But when someone is hiding something, they start building a cushion of words, a verbal fog dense enough to make you lose focus. Psychologically, this is called information flooding. It's an unconscious defense mechanism triggered by fear of exposure. When her brain senses threat, the possibility that you've noticed something, it scrambles to build narrative control. The logic is simple. The more context she gives, the less you'll notice the core inconsistency, and it works on the untrained ear. That's why your role isn't to listen harder, it's to listen smarter. Here's how you do it. When she talks too much, stop tracking the details and start tracking the distance. How far her words are drifting from the question you asked. If her story doubles back, loops around, or adds random justification, she's not explaining, she's distracting. That's your red flag. You'll notice microtells too. Her tone will shift between calm and defensive. She'll smile too long, fill silence with, "You know what I mean?" or overshare about things that don't matter. She's not opening up. She's buying time. Every unnecessary detail is an emotional bandage trying to cover a wound she doesn't want you to see. So instead of confronting her mid-sentence, just nod. Let her finish the monologue, then repeat her main point back to her. Short, cold, stripped of fluff. "So, you're saying you just went there, talked for a bit, and came home. You'll feel it." The tension drop in her voice. The hesitation that follows, because your summary just killed her cushion. The truth has nowhere left to hide. Here's what most men miss. You're not in a conversation. You're in a narrative negotiation. The more she talks, the more information she leaks. But your power is in what you don't respond to. Every time you let her drown in her own words, you give her enough rope to hang the lie herself. So listen differently, not to what she's saying, to what she's avoiding. If her answers get longer than your question, she's building a wall, not a bridge. Guilt always speaks in paragraphs. Honesty speaks in sentences. And if you can hear that difference, you're already holding the power she's trying to protect. But the real shift happens when you change the frame of the entire conversation. Most men beg for honesty. Leaders command clarity. That single difference changes everything, because the moment you ask for honesty, you've already surrendered emotional power. You're admitting that your peace depends on her truth, and that gives her the upper hand. She now controls the tempo, the tone, and the tension. You've made her the gatekeeper of your calm. Think about it. When you say, "I just need to know the truth," you're not being strong. You're confessing attachment. You're saying, "My sense of self depends on your validation." And that's the perfect cue for her to tighten her control. But when you shift the frame, everything changes. You stop playing defense and start setting the emotional terms of engagement. Instead of needing the truth, you define the conversation around clarity. You're not begging, you're assessing, you're not reacting, you're observing, you're showing her silently that you have the emotional stability to move with or without her cooperation. Say it once calmly, "I don't need to argue, I just need clarity to move accordingly." That line lands harder than any accusation, because what she hears underneath isn't threat, it's detachment. It tells her, "You no longer control how I feel." That's when the panic starts, because every manipulative dynamic thrives on your emotional dependence. When she realizes she's lost that anchor, she starts reaching. She re-explains, reframes, backtracks, desperate to regain narrative control. You'll notice it in her body language, the pause before she answers, the sudden softness in her tone, the searching eyes trying to gauge how much you know. You haven't raised your voice or changed your expression, but you've changed the entire ecosystem of communication. The psychological principle is called frame control. In any human interaction, the one who defines the frame defines the reality. And when you hold your frame, calm, clear, detached, her manipulative scripts start to fail. She can no longer pull you into her emotional rhythm. You're outside the game, watching it play out. That's why the most powerful men aren't the ones who argue well. They're the ones who refuse to participate in emotional tough-war. They don't chase truth. They make truth chase them. When you reach that level, you stop reacting to lies because they can't survive in your presence. You've removed the oxygen of emotional tension. And without that, manipulation suffocates. So remember this. Clarity isn't something you get from her, it's something you create for yourself. Once she senses that, she realizes something deeper. She's not the one holding power anymore, and once you emotionally detach, she has nothing left to hold on to. The more you care, the less honest she becomes, not because she's cruel, but because your emotions give her a mirror and she's learned how to use it. Women read emotion like a second language. They feel the tension in your silence, the tremor in your voice, the hesitation behind your words. And once she senses that her truth affects your peace, she learns something dangerous. Your feelings are her leverage. This is where most men lose control. They confuse love with surrender. They think caring deeply means reacting quickly, but emotional exposure isn't connection. It's currency. And once she knows you'll trade peace for answers, she'll never stop testing how far she can push the exchange. Emotional detachment changes that completely. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. You stop letting her emotional storms dictate your internal weather. You become the eye of the hurricane, calm, steady, unmoved, while everything around you spins. Here's what happens next. When you detach, her control mechanisms fail. She can't provoke you with silence. She can't guilt you with tears. She can't manipulate you with confusion, because now every emotional tool she's ever used lands flat against your composure. And that stillness terrifies her, because a woman's emotional influence depends on reaction. When she loses that feedback loop, when her words no longer trigger you, she feels invisible. And invisibility to a woman means loss of power. So she does what every human does when they feel power slipping away. She reaches for truth. She starts explaining herself. She starts clarifying unasked questions. She confesses not because she wants to, but because she's trying to re-establish connection through honesty. Her truth becomes her peace offering. It's not manipulation anymore. It's instinct, because when your emotions no longer belong to her, she must rebuild trust the only way she can, by being real. That's why emotional detachment is the ultimate lie detector. It creates silence without saying a word. It makes dishonesty uncomfortable, transparency inevitable. It forces her to face herself, not through confrontation, but through your calm. Detachment is not coldness. It's awareness without attachment. You're not punishing her. You're protecting your peace. You're showing that your value doesn't rise or fall with her approval, and in that moment, something profound happens. She finally sees what you've known all along. When you stop needing the truth, she finally tells it, because that's not manipulation. It's emotional awareness. It's the quiet mastery of a man who doesn't chase honesty because his presence demands it. You don't get the truth by chasing it. You get it by becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to, because when you finally understand the psychology behind her words, the safety, the control, the emotional choreography, everything changes. You stop reacting to what she says and start observing what she protects. You stop being led by confusion and start leading through clarity. Let's take a moment to remember what you've learned here. You now understand why she bends the truth, not to deceive, but to maintain control. You've learned that awareness, not aggression, exposes the lie. You've mastered silence, the invisible mirror where truth reveals itself. You can now hear guilt inside over explanation and calm inside sincerity. You've learned how to shift the entire frame, taking back control of your emotional narrative. And above all, you've seen that the highest form of power is detachment, because nothing exposes truth faster than indifference to it. That's the transformation. You move from the man who demands honesty to the man who commands it. You stop chasing reassurance and you start leading the dynamic. You stop reacting to emotional chaos and you begin to set the temperature of every room you walk into. That's the difference between being emotionally reactive and being emotionally sovereign, between playing her game and mastering your own. So the next time you sense something off, don't panic, don't press, don't plead, just breathe, watch. Stay silent, because she'll either tell you the truth or she'll expose it trying to hide it. You don't force the truth out of a woman. You evolve into the man she can't lie to. And if this message hit you, don't just watch, learn, subscribe, comment your story below, and share this with a man who still chases answers instead of control. Because in this game, truth isn't spoken, it's revealed.